98.6? No, that's nothing to do with a radio dial. That has been considered a normal temperature for many years. We all know that. But that's not the truth anymore, according to research from Stanford Medicine. They found that today's normal body temperature hovers closer to 97.9. And that 98.6 standard comes from data published originally in 1868. I mean, our healthcare has kind of changed a little bit since then, so I get body temperature might be one of those changes.
Well, what's funny is my temperature is always really low. It's more, I don't remember it ever really being at 98.6.
Cold-blooded. I'm just kidding.
But, however, last Sunday at church, I'm cold. Last Sunday at church, I was sitting there, and thankfully I had a sleeveless dress on with a jacket over it. And I have been, I do photography for the church. That's the ministry I'm involved in, the creative team. And I've been moving around. So when I got into the service, I thought maybe I'm just hot from moving around. I don't know. Have you seen that video going around of the steam coming off of that lady's head on social media? There's this video of this woman going through menopause and steam's going off her head.
Well, I understand
legitimately had my first daytime hot flash because there was nothing changing around me. And I was like, Greg grabbed my hand. He was like, my hands are freezing. I'm like, I am sweating. There's sweat dripping down my back right now.
Bless Kristen.
But it happened once you got close to me. So.
Oh, my.
Right. Because
Here we go.
How it works.
So I guess I've passed into a new phase in life.
Phases in life and going through them is a weird thing, isn't it?
Have you had that happen yet, Kristen?
I'm teetering.
It's weird.
The Perry, our listeners are loving this. The Perry, I think, is hitting in for me.
Yes.
There was a meme the other day or a video or something that it was like, Perry menopause, and it was Julie Andrews singing to everyone in Sound of Music, and you're kind of okay. And then it was like after that, go away, go away, go away. Yeah. When you hit the full throttle there.
That's literally what it is. Yeah. Yes. Greg knows. The last 2 years have been heck for him.
Greg, feeling okay? You feel safe, Greg?
Check on Greg.
I am checking on Greg.
He may not be okay.
It's all good.
Well, hey, you know what? We're kind of normalizing a conversation that is not really a lot of fun for people, but it's just a part of health and life. And so what's the big deal? Let's talk about normalcy.
Transition is never fun.
Right.
With anything.
No.
Especially this whole industry you guys work in, retirement. It's really hard for a lot of people to go from working, staying busy, making sure they get to the meeting on time, all of that.
Like going from 98.6 to 97.9, right?
Exactly.
You're changing things. You're changing, it's not temperature, but
it's a change.
It's change in environment. It's a change in activity. It's a change in routine. And so that affects everyone. As you're moving towards retirement, you'll start to see more and more of those changes. And really, I think I liken it to the last major change like this was maybe when you got married and started having children. Mm-hmm. Really, I mean, it's a major life change. It's a different time.
It's not for sissies.
Different season.
Well, so since the normal temperature has changed since 18, whatever it was, what about a normal retirement? How often do those numbers change? And what does it look like?
Well, it's interesting, really. I mean,
what's interesting, Greg?
There's really no such thing as a normal retirement
Kristen's
plan.
laughing still. I hear it. I hear the silent laugh.
Because
Greg's so serious.
He's always so serious. Go ahead.
He just moved right on from my shenanigans.
He has no time for us.
Carry on.
I like your shenanigans many times.
There's that.
Tell us what's interesting, Greg.
Yes. Well, it is interesting to me because you can't really define what a normal retirement is based on how much someone has saved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because it's all over the place. It really is. But it's different for every single family. And, when you think about it, how do you know if you saved enough? Because I would say that's really the common question that brings a lot of people in. Now, sometimes it's taxes, sometimes it's market volatility, but in many cases, it's because people want to know, have I done enough to be able to retire and stay retired? That's a big key here. And so how do we know? Well, number one, determine the amount of income that you actually want to live on in retirement. Determine how much it's going to take to do, first of all, to pay your bills, because, the bills keep coming.
So you're saying basically create a budget.
Well, kind of. But, I find that half half the families we talk to don't really have a true budget.
Right. But you have to create one to kind of know where you're at, right?
You do. You have to create a realistic budget to at least, not that you're going to be tied to your budget, but you need to know exactly what you spend. So you got to pay your bills and hopefully live a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, hopefully live a lot. Do stuff, whatever that means to you. And, it's interesting. Had a couple come in recently and they want to travel to every national park in the United States.
So cool.
Oh, wow.
That is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
We've had families that wanted to go to every Major League Baseball stadium.
I've heard of that.
And watch a baseball game. And so everybody has their own unique vision of what retirement should look like.
Did anybody's mind go to where mine did?
No.
I'm sure someone out there is Googling it. I know they are. So for to save you time, there's 63 national parks.
I did kind of wonder, but not to that degree.
So I guess you better plan on going to more than one a year, if
Right?
But 63. Wow, I didn't realize there was that many.
A lot of travel.
Yeah. So determine the amount you need. Second of all, tally the income streams that you're going to have, whether it be Social Security, pension, rental income, any other. We work with a gentleman who has a oil and gas lease on a property and, getting quite a bit of income each year from that. And so everybody has their own unique story as to where their income is going to come from, but tally that up and see, do you have a gap? That's where we do the math. Thirdly, do the math. Figure out, okay, what realistically do we need? I heard someone on the radio the other day, they said, according to AARP, you only need $10,000 a year from your money. I thought that is ridiculous. I don't know of any family we work with that only needs $10,000 a year from their money unless they just don't need any because they've got more income than they need.
Could
but
be.
realistically, every family has their own story. So we have a family right now that came in and they'd saved $650,000. Mm-hmm. And they came in a little bit discouraged, I would say, in that they wanted to have done more. Okay? But they're like, is it possible for us to retire in a year? I said, well, let's do some math here. Let's talk about it. We went through what it was really going to take, what they really spent, what they were living on now. And I said, we better add 10 to 20% to that because retirement costs more. And so we did. And we figured out there was going to be a $24,000 a year gap between what they were going to have coming in from Social Security and a pension and what they were actually going to need. So in order to fill that gap, we tested it, and it was going to take $350,000 of their $650 to fill that $24,000 a year gap. That left $300,000 for long-term growth, for needs, for wants, for emergencies. And I said, it'd be nice if you had a little bit more, but I said, to be very honest, I don't see a problem with what you've done. If you want to retire in a year, I think we can make that happen for you.
Very cool.
And because we have a written plan.
Mm-hmm.
We've addressed the risk in their portfolio. We've addressed income needs. We've addressed taxes. We have a plan for converting some of that over to a Roth, in their case, a little at a time.
I see why you guys say it starts with kind of budgeting. That makes sense, like walking the story back.
It does. Another couple came in. In fact, they just became clients. They needed an additional $8,000 a month. $96,000 a year. And so for them, that took $1.3 million to generate that income. And that left them about $900,000 for growth. So in one family's case, $2.2 million was the right amount. In another family's case, we can make it work with $650,000.
So it all depends on lifestyle.
It depends on lifestyle. It depends on need. It depends on a lot of things. What people are used to living on and what's important to them. Because what's important to one family is not necessarily what's important to somebody else. So this is why it's personal. It's a personal plan.
Well, it is, Greg, and I want to point out, I think one of the articles we saw recently from Yahoo Finance was talking about net worth and families and average net worth and all that.
Because people want to know how they measure up.
They do, but that doesn't even really matter because remember, and this oftentimes people forget, net worth includes all your bank accounts, all your investment accounts, your real estate,
your car,
your jewelry, valuables. It includes everything, but those are not all liquid assets. Those are not all things you can generate income from. So really that number you are getting at there is what you really need to rely on. You may already have all the things. You don't have any debt. Your net worth is what it is. It's not less any of those debts. And so you own your house, you own your cars, you own all the jewelry you'd ever want, you own the artwork you'd ever want. And so now you're really just living off of what you have as liquid assets, and you get to sit and enjoy the things that you've purchased over time. So having that as a part of the conversation is often very important too. We get a lot of calls, people saying, oh, I don't have much, but I have net worth with real estate and all these things. And so that adds to the conversation, I think, as really we're trying to figure out this massive equation of how you're going to get through retirement, right?
Yes. So how do you know if you've saved enough? You're listening today. Well, determine the amount of income you need. Tally the income streams you're going to have. Let's do the math. Let's figure out the gap. Then calculate what it's going to take to generate that income. Then, next, will you have enough money for growth and discretionary spending? You know, what happens when you need to replace the roof on the house? What happens if you need to buy a new car? Those are things that you need to calculate as part of it. And then, number 6, have a written, personalized plan. Not some generic thing, not AARP's average for Americans. Who cares what AARP thinks? You have your own individual needs.
Or just call us as step 1. We help with all that.
We do, but, you know, people need a reason sometimes to, and they need to understand what it takes to have a solid plan.
Yes.
Because when all this is said and done, Kristen, the most wonderful part of it is people can now have peace of mind.
Right.
They can now have confidence. They can now feel security in their retirement days. And isn't that what the plan is really intended to do?